Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for IF Day's Webinar Wednesday. I'm June Rawl, the Director for Florida IF Day. Today's webinar, The Power of TABE, is going to be a review of some updates and some new existing resources that you can use that are coming from DRC. And on another note, I know that many of you have asked about the ability to transfer scores seamlessly between the TABE portal and your local data system. So today we're going to focus and talk a little bit about that so we can put your mind at ease. Today's webinar is being facilitated by Mike Johnson, the National Adult Education Director for TABE. And along with Mike, we have Christine Kirk from the Florida TABE Assessment Consultant Department. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go over a few things to remember before we start our webinar today. If you do have a question, go ahead and type it into the Q&A section option that is provided for you on your screen. Remember that all of your microphones are muted and you are in listen-only mode. Today's presentation, like all presentations, are recorded and it will be available for access within 48 hours on the IF Day website. So Mike, Christine, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you so much for facilitating our webinar today.
Okay, thank you, June. And I'll move the slides forward just to our first slide and talk about just a quick review. And I think most people are very familiar with TABE and TABE 11 and 12, but just for people that are new, TABE is a standardized assessment that's used throughout Florida for educational gains and measuring educational gains. From the historical standpoint, it did start back in 1967 with versions 1 and 2. So when we always talk about the numbers of TABE, whether it was 9 and 10 or 11 and 12, those are the current forms of the test. Or the versions of the test. When we talk about TABE 11 and 12 specifically, it was released in January of 2018. It is operating under 7 years of federal approval. So that federal approval will run out in 2024. So as we start to end here in 2021 and start into 2022, we're actually starting to work on the frameworks of what the next versions of TABE will be. So you'll certainly hear more about that in the future, but nothing too drastic and changing. We are, I guess, looking at an adaptive version of the TABE test. So that is something that we're all anxiously looking forward to. That will help TABE Online become a little bit shorter, a little bit easier to administer. But again, that's a few years away still under the federal process. When we talk about TABE and the content within TABE, most programs use reading, math, and language. There is a writing component for TABE. It is a fairly new test that we'll talk about a little bit later, but writing is still going through its federal review process. So we won't talk about that in terms of recording scores for writing, but maybe other possible uses for that. And we'll also talk about the alignment of TABE to the high school equivalency test. So in Florida, that would be the GED test, and understanding kind of how TABE aligns to both the college and career readiness standards and to high school equivalency and where those pieces come together. Where TABE is used is also in a vast area. Typically, most programs in the top left corner, they're the WIOA funded programs under Florida Department of Ed, but there are other uses of TABE. A large use is correctional programs. So if we think about corrections at a state level, that's the state prisons, and Florida Department of Corrections certainly does use TABE, but also the county jails use TABE in numerous different ways. Every state is different, whether corrections is part of the funded programs or separate. They also are separate on how they use those scores. Some of them are working specifically toward high school equivalency. I'll use Indiana as an example. They use TABE as a precursor to high school equivalency, but it's also as an incentive within the correctional programs. If you get a certain score on TABE, you get 6 months off your sentence. And then if you go on to get your high school equivalency, you get another 6 months off your sentence. So used as an incentive piece there to encourage enrollment into the educational program. We also have many programs that use TABE in the college setting. Typically, that's in a college placement area. A lot of programs might use it as a screening tool into, let's say, a nursing program or a career tech program. So a lot of different uses outside of just looking at pre and post test scores. And there are a few states that also are looking at TABE as possible areas to include within high school equivalency. New York and South Carolina are the two that I come to mind that have pilot programs to look at using TABE reading and math scores as a substitute for the reading and math sections of high school equivalency, trying to shorten the pathway for those students that are going through the high school equivalency track. So those are some possible and other uses across the country for that. One of the biggest things that we're doing today, and as a kind of a big update for TABE, is that we are working on a new workforce category or portal for TABE. TABE Workforce will put together a couple of different research projects. To start this project off, we've worked with a company called Metametrics to align TABE reading and math scores to their Lexile and quantile measures. And if you're familiar with K-12 testing, you may be familiar with the term Lexile or quantile. Those are reading measures that were created by Metametrics as a tool to kind of remove the grade discussion from K-12. If I'm a parent and I have a student that's a very strong reader, but they're in the 4th grade, they may be reading up to the 6th or 7th grade level, Lexiles will allow them to have a Lexile of the student and a Lexile of the material that they're reading so that they can read at their level and not have to be stuck on, let's say, 4th grade content if they're advanced readers. And same thing with math. That's kind of in the school setting. Another project that Metametrics has worked on is that they've gone through and Lexiled and quantiled the reading and math requirements for the top 550 jobs on the U.S. Department of Labor's ONET jobs database. So if you have students that are looking into career technical programs and wondering, are they ready for those types of programs? We have now begun this project to link TABE scores to the reading and math requirements for the ONET jobs database. Very shortly, early next spring, we'll be launching this new portal within our interactive reporting system that will allow you to work with students and search through the resources of careers and understanding what careers are available for the students at their reading and math ability or what they're targeting to work for in the future. Again, this is projected to be available in early spring. You'll start to hear more and more about this at the end of the year and early part of 2022, but it will be a great new addition for workforce-focused students or career technical students. A very, very, very rough idea of kind of what this would look like, and this is, again, a very rough framework. This example on the screen is pulled from the Metametrics website. And what Metametrics has done, as I mentioned, they've already outlined the reading requirements and math requirements for many of the top in-demand jobs or bright outlook jobs. So here's one job, for example, computer systems analyst, the top left corner. In the top left corner also, it says it's a bright outlook job. What's the degree education level? Again, this is all ONET data. So it's a bachelor's degree in computer and electronics or math to be a computer systems analyst. So again, this might be more for college placement, but this is just an example. All jobs will have the same framework. So we'll have the education level. Down at the very bottom, we have the salary and projected growth areas from the Department of Labor. So you have the statistics around that job. And what Metametrics has added on the right-hand side of the screen is the reading requirements for this type of job. So again, it is a fairly advanced job in this example of computer systems analyst. And you can see that a Lexile of around 1400 is needed to be successful in the reading requirements of this specific job. So the left-hand side of the screen is kind of Department of Labor information. The right-hand side of the screen is the Lexile information from Metametrics. What we are adding to this in our portal will be the TABE information. So you'll have all 3 pieces of information in a new interactive area within the TABE Workforce Portal. So now students will know, again, we'll certainly work to have more applicable jobs, potentially more career tech jobs as examples. But in this case, if I'm coming in and my TABE score says my Lexile level is 900, I know in order to be successful as a computer analyst, I need to get my reading ability up a little bit higher to that 13 to 1400 range. And so now I know what to work on in reading for this specific job. And we'll have the same for math requirements with the quantiles. So again, a new workforce portal for programs to use with their students coming in early 2022 from that perspective. Another new area, a little bit newer, is having our TABE Class E test available online. So TABE Class E is for ESL students. It's approved in Florida for reading and listening content areas. Class E does include writing and speaking, but reading and listening are the required areas within Florida. You can use Class E in the same platform that you use TABE Online with TABE 11 and 12. So if you know how to use TABE 11 and 12 already from the Insight testing platform, you're already trained on how to use TABE Class E. And it provides a great way for students to complete those reading and listening requirements on the computer. They do use headphones to do the listening portion of the test, but all pieces are scored within the Insight system, just as it is with TABE 11 and 12. We are going through an update with TABE 11, or TABE Class E. Over the next 1.5 to 2 years, you'll start to see some new questions introduced for the test. We are not changing the objectives or the outline of the test, so not a huge change. But as our federal approval expires in 2023, we want to update this test with new test questions and use those as our new application for federal approval. So we'll be doing that early next year and have some updates going forward. I don't have it on this slide, but there is a research project as part of that that's just kicking off. If you have any interest in Class E and would like to try it out with some students and have the students get some compensation and the programs get some compensation for that, we'll have more information on the research project. You can either let Christine or I know, and we can get you the information to try out TABE Class E online as part of our research study. And that's going on basically in November and December for that project. It might go in a little bit into January, but mainly November and December. As I've mentioned, the Insight portal is kind of the starting point for everything related to TABE. This is also for TABE 11 and 12, for TABE Class E online. It's also for our scanning and scoring area for paper and pencil testing, and also for the new offline area for TABE. So TABE, we'll talk about in a moment, has an offline delivery method that can be used for programs that have limited bandwidth or might have correctional settings that don't allow internet access to the candidates that are testing. And that will be a new area for programs to use on the computer-based platform. As I mentioned, TABE Offline is available. It did start as a project within the Texas Department of Corrections. They were using paper and pencil and scanning answer sheets. And what they've seen so far in their rollout is that about a 97% in administrative time spent on assessments, switching from the paper and pencil version to an offline computer version. If you're familiar at all with the GED correctional process, where you take a laptop in and out of a connected environment, that's very similar to what we do with TABE Offline. So again, it does have an online component for the proctor to be online to transmit scores, but typically there's a laptop that will go from a connected environment to a non-connected environment. That could be a correctional setting, that could be a rural setting or a low bandwidth area. So you may have a classroom that does not have a strong internet connection and you want to test. You can use TABE Offline, have all the responses connect back to the proctor's laptop, and then that proctor will connect to an internet connection and transmit all those responses for scoring. We can certainly give you more information, and I'll point to more information on our TABE website a little bit later for TABE Offline testing. Just as a sample of offline, it is a little bit different than TABE Online. Our offline test is a digital version of the paper and pencil test. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see a digital copy of the test booklet. This is actually a digital copy of our paper test booklet. The right-hand side is an active answer sheet for the students to go ahead and select their answers based on the questions on the left-hand side of the page. You'll see a scroll bar there in the middle that you can scroll through the test. This happens to be a sample for the reading test, and they can go ahead and select their answers and scroll down to the next answer. As June mentioned, another area that's of great interest is having the access to some data that can help eliminate some of the administrative time on recording TABE scores. And we do have the process in place, and we're doing that with a few programs in Florida already. I know Miami-Dade Public Schools uses it. They get a nightly data feed into their data system. But we can set this up for any program that wants to receive their data on a nightly basis. It does come as a CSV file, which is a version that can be opened in Excel, but is more of a common file in CSV. And it can be sent for the full program. So again, we're doing it for all the Miami-Dade locations as an example. We do it for the whole state in other states that have state accounts for TABE testing. So we can send the whole state a file. To start this process, you just have to, again, let Christine or I know that you'd like to sign up for the data extract nightly file. You can also get this on demand within our portal. So you can go in and get this file yourself, or we can set it up to have it sent nightly to your database system. This is a really bad version because the data file is kind of big. So the top section of this report is the start, and I'm going to try to use some of the tools that we have available here. Up in the top area, we have the last name, first name, date of birth, gender, what test they took, what level of TABE they took, their scores, where they took the test, and what their NRS, and then the mode. Was it paper-based and it was scanned? Was it offline? Was it online? So all the modes are tracked here, and I apologize for my bad line drawing. But then on continuing on, you can see that we're in column V up here in the top. So we're going to continue out to the rows or the columns going to the right, and they pick back up here in the bottom section. We've added all the skill information. So now we see measurement and data, conventions of standard English, how many questions were on the test, how many points the student obtained, did they have full proficiency or partial proficiency. Essentially, all the information that's on the current PDF report is now available in the extract file. This will continue out into that information on their strengths and weaknesses. So I didn't include it all here, but it's all available in the extract file for everybody to have access to. If you have a local data system that can accept an import file, we can certainly, again, set you up to have the extract come. There's no additional fees to have the data file sent to you, and it will help reduce any time that's being spent hand entering scores into your data system. The second part that we've updated to this data extract is what I've mentioned of adding in the skill information from our TABE report, those strengths and weakness areas. That might be of interest to local programs. I know Miami-Dade, again, they have their own curriculum system, and they're going to use that information to be imported into the curriculum system as well. But you also might be working with companies like Aztec Software or Burlington English or Essential Education, and those companies are interested in being able to program for this TABE extract file so that they can pull students' responses directly into their system and have custom learning paths built. So whether you have internal curriculum tools like Miami-Dade has, or you're using a vendor, whether it's Burlington or Aztec or any of those other ones, we are working to work with those organizations so that they can accept this data file as well into their system. We talked a little bit about the writing test. Writing is that new content area for TABE 11 and 12 that is still going through its federal review process. It is available in our online testing platform, but only in the in-person testing. So not on paper testing, not on remote proctoring, just in-person testing. It is a little bit different than the traditional parts of TABE because there is no locator used. It's just one level of the test. There are 15 multiple choice questions, and at the end, whether you have 11 or 12, you have an argumentative essay or an informative essay. The last part that's a little bit different is that that essay is scored locally with an educator scoring section that we provide the rubric to within our portal. So again, if you do use writing, maybe you have an employer that would like to have a writing ability measured for candidates, or you have a career tech program that needs to have a writing measurement tool. While we're going through that federal process, you can certainly use the TABE writing test for those needs. Eventually, we'll have the writing test federally approved, and then we'll get that approved with the Florida DOE. That could be a possible measurement content area in the future for NRS reporting. We've also done some research around high school equivalency with TABE 11 and 12 and the high school equivalency test. We had students take both TABE and the high school equivalency test, and we were able to submit that information and all that data to our psychometricians to work on a correlation report or a concordance report. And we have this concordance published on our website of tabetest.com. And I'll jump out there in a moment to show you where this is located. But what our research has shown is that a student that gets at least a 536 on TABE 11 or 12 level M or above, they would have a strong likelihood of passing the high school equivalency test. So again, level M, which is the start of NRS level 4, that 536 is the start of NRS level 4, they would have a strong likelihood of passing at a minimum level the high school equivalency test. Now, it's important to remember, passing at the minimum level, while a great accomplishment for students, and typically is the goal for most students, is a starting point in the U.S. Department of Education's eyes in their planning process for adult education. So obtaining your high school equivalency isn't meant to be the end point. It's meant to be a stop along the pathway. You can obviously see that from all high school equivalency publishers. They publish a secondary cut score, which is typically called the college or career ready score. So we can see on the GED, that's getting a 627 on level D or above, gets me that readiness for that second level score of the GED. And then on the GED, they have that third level score, which is the college career plus credit, or college ready plus credit. And that's a 721 on TABE level A or above. I'll switch to the math, and the math is 537, again, start of NRS level 4. And there are some programs that have asked, well, why does TABE align to at level M and not level A to passing the high school equivalency test? And again, if I minimally pass the GED at that 145 score, that means I met the minimum requirements, or getting C's and D's in high school. If I have a student that gets C's and D's in high school and they move on to a post-secondary program or a career tech program, they're most likely not ready for the rigors of that content, whether it's a career tech program or a post-secondary degree program. And they may be enrolled and have to take a developmental ed class or a remedial class that is typically not for credit, but does cost tuition. And that's what the U.S. Department of Education was doing with the NRS system, in having those advanced NRS levels of levels 5 and 6, so that students exiting adult ed, not just simply passing a high school equivalency test, but exiting adult education at NRS level 6 would be very prepared and ready for success at the next level, whether that was post-secondary, whether that was a career program, whether that was a workforce program. And so when we look at TABE, and people often ask, why is level D or level A of TABE much more rigorous than the GED? And it's because of the federal standards that TABE is required to follow, where high school equivalency it typically does not have that information. Moving on to the reporting side for TABE, most programs use the individual profile, and there is a portfolio report available. This portfolio report is available for both Class E and 11 and 12. And then we've already talked about the extract. You can extract on a nightly basis. We call that the bulk export, or you can do it within the system on demand anytime you want. and you have access to the same CSV file inside of our portal for that. Looking at the individual profile for TABE 11 and 12 and kind of those new areas, and we've covered this a little bit in the past, so just a quick refresher. That measurable skills gain column on the far right-hand side only looks back to the test date as far back as July 1st. So again, the state has different policies that might allow June testing or May testing to carry over to the new program year. We standardized on July 1st. So this yes or no column in the red box looks at the date column and says, has their NRS score improved from July 1st to this test date? So in those 3 months or 3.5 months since July 1st, this student improved on a previous test for reading and math, but did not improve for language. And so again, we're not looking at all time records, just going back to the previous July 1st on the testing date column. At the bottom, the left-hand side of the report is our blueprint domain areas, and it will help you understand where the 2-point questions are based. So we can see there was 18 questions for key ideas and details, 17 questions for craft and structure, and 5 questions for integration of knowledge and ideas. But the total points available are a little bit different. 18 points for 18 questions. Then we have 20 points for 17 questions and 9 points for 5 questions. So as a teacher, I know where the 2-point questions are coming from within the TABE 11 and 12 reading content area. I can take that over to our website, and I'll jump over there real quick to tabetest.com. You should see the screen change. I can go under the resource tab under TABE 11 and 12 and go over to our blueprint area. Let me get there real quick. And under the blueprint, I can open that up and I can go, this was level M that we were looking at for reading, and I'll scroll down to level M for reading. And so here's the blueprint for level M for reading, and it will show us that almost half the test is key ideas and details, and certainly way more than 75%, almost 90 or 89% is craft and structure and key ideas and details combined. So if I go to the report, I know how many questions are in each area. Now I know the percentages, and I can scroll down and see where the areas of emphasis are. On level M, reading, under key ideas and details, we cover quite a few of the sub-skills, but the last 3 are the ones that are listed as high emphasis. So out of that 47%, the majority of the questions are coming from those 3 areas, those 3 high emphasis areas. And then we have 2 medium emphasis areas and 2 low emphasis areas. So again, as a teacher looking at these blueprints, I can now align my curriculum, my instructional plan based on what's being measured on each level of TABE and where that emphasis level is at. I'm going to jump back to our PowerPoint real quick. Go on to the second page. And the second page is where we see the strengths or demonstrated skills and our weaknesses, the areas of next focus. And so this, again, directly relates to my performance on the test. Did I get a question wrong? What sub-skill did that measure? And if I got it correct, it's a strength. If I got it incorrect, it's an area for next focus. This is the area that's been most recently added to our extract file, that CSV file. So now that we can have this strength and weakness area in a digital format to be able to import into curriculum systems in the future will be a great help to align educational pathways for students into their TABE success as well. Class E has a very similar report. So if you're using Class E, either part of our pilot or using it for state reporting, you'll have access to the individual profile report. We have the content areas on the left-hand side, reading, listening, writing, speaking. This student tested in all the areas. They have their scores and then their proficiencies at the very bottom. Very shortly, we'll have the strengths and weaknesses also on the second page for the report. That's in the final stages of development for this specific report as well. I've jumped over to the tabetest.com site once, and I'm going to go back there real quick, but our resources are divided into 2 areas. our public information on tabetest.com, and then our restricted access under our portal, which is the Insight portal that you have access through TABE Online or from our scanning system or Class E Online. The difference between the two areas, and the restricted areas where you'll find all the manuals, all the directions, all the scoring guides. On the main public website, you'll have access all to the resources of the test itself. So I'm going to jump over there again to our public website, go back to our main area. I'm going to go back to the home screen for tabetest.com. On our home screen, you'll see some of our announcements that will scroll across. This big orange one that's on the screen right now is a new case study we did with Victoria College in Texas and their use of TABE Class E Online and how it's improved their program. They do both remote proctoring and in-person testing with TABE Class E Online. So this is a great case study to review. The link is right at the bottom. The arrows will scroll through other announcements that we have, whether it's the secure browser for remote testing or some of our ProctorU options that could be possibly used. So you can certainly scroll through the announcements at the top, but quite often you'll come right to the top of the screen and go to our resource tab. Under the resource tab in the middle of the screen is a link to the TABE to high school concordance. So that report I just showed you a little while ago on the PowerPoint, the full information is listed here on the full concordance report. So you can go out there and look at that report in a little bit more detail. Also under the resource tab, in the bottom 3/4 of the screen here, we have our online tools training. If you need to take some sample questions in our online testing environment, you can do that with our online tools training. This will give you access in a public setting for students to try out the TABE online testing platform and do that with actual TABE sample questions. So it's a great resource to use as a group exercise and prepare students for what online testing will be from that standpoint. If you are doing remote proctoring, there's a link to the remote proctoring guidelines. If we go out to that link, it will be a white paper that gives us a lot of different links, whether we're doing ProctorU or our own proctoring with WebEx or Zoom sessions. So all the resources are in one area, and you can certainly go through the videos, go through some of the training and FAQs, and all the manuals for remote proctoring as well are posted there. And then last, just under TABE 11 and 12 specifically within our portal, you have access to a lot of great tools, whether they're the, let me get back there. Oops, real quick. There we go. We can go to our practice items. We can go to the blueprints. If I want to print out the practice items as PDFs, I can certainly do that. We can go to the blueprints like we did already. There's a crosswalk available for the skills. So if you are trying to align TABE skills to the college and career readiness definitions, there are crosswalks that are available. So I'll go out to the reading one that we've looked at already. So key ideas and details is TABE 11M reading. We call a skill on the left-hand side a short version of the college and career readiness. So we see support a stated inference with detail from the text. That's what it would show up on your TABE report as. That aligns to the college and career readiness numbers in the middle of the screen or the full college and career readiness definition on the right-hand side. So again, if you have curriculum that's aligned to the CCRSs, you can certainly align the TABE definitions to those as well with the crosswalks that are available. And then also under the TABE 11 and 12 section is a sample of the report. So if you wanted to have a sample of a TABE report, that's there. And also some information on our scoring and understanding the scale scores. So here's a chart for scale scores that will show where the targeted area of each level of TABE is at. And I'll draw your attention to that 536 for reading on level M. That's the beginning score of NRS level 4. So that high school equivalency score of 536 for reading or 537 for math is the entrance score into NRS level 4. Going to jump back to our PowerPoint real quick. last thing I want to cover is linking to curriculum. And we've kind of started to talk about that with our data file that can be used if you have a learning system, that we're working with publishers for that. But we've also done some webinars with each of our publishing partners. So whether you're using Burlington or Paxton or Aztec or Essential Ed, we've done individual webinars with each of our partners that you can certainly go back and review. Those webinars are stored on our website under the resource tab, under TABE 11 and 12. And then at the very bottom, we have our webinar series. So all the webinars are listed there that you can click on and watch any of our recorded webinars, whether they're training webinars for TABE Online or TABE Class E, or informational webinars about our curriculum partners. All of that is available and stored on our website for you to review. I'm going to stop there and see if we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A. Again, if you have a question, you can certainly put it in the Q&A section and we'll answer that. And I will go back to June and Christine to see if we have any questions that are coming up.
Mike, there's no questions posted in the chat or Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. And we'll certainly give it another minute, but I will move my slide to the next one to give you our information. You can always contact Christine or myself. We're both here local in Florida, so we can help you out in any way we can. I also want to draw your attention to our support line, the 866-282-2250. If you're having trouble with our TABE Online system or the portal itself, you can always call the support team. They are available at no additional fees. They will ask you for specific examples. So calling them up to say, I can't get reports. They would like to know what student's name you're trying to get. They're going to try to follow the same pathway you took. So again, if you call the support team, try to have as much information as you can, whether that relates to a student name and a test date or a test session that you're working on, so that they can investigate the whole pathway for you. While we wait to see if there's any additional questions, I'll go back and turn it back to June to kind of wrap up.
Thank you, Mike. I don't see any additional questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank you and Christine. This has really been helpful resources, and people are starting to say the same thing in the chat. You will see now an evaluation that will come on your screen. If you could just take a minute to answer these 3 short questions, we really would appreciate your feedback. I'm going to pause for a minute. And while you're answering those questions, I just want to remind you that our next webinar on November 17th will be titled Using Data to Develop IET Programs. So we hope that all of you can join us on our next webinar Wednesday. I hope all of you stay well and stay safe, and know that we are here for you in any capacity that you need regarding professional development. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you again, Mike and Christine. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, June.